Okay, we're going to go over needle setup a little bit. The most important thing about needles is looping them, and if you don't know what looping means, um, you're in trouble. If you look at the bottom of the screen, that's an eye loop. I'm sure you've seen it. It's a jeweler's tool, and you need one. I know that one says 10 times. I would recommend getting one at least 15, 20. If you can get one higher, I have one that's 30, which is really helpful for not straining my eyes to look at the needles. You got to check your needles. Um, One of the most shocking things that I've come across in the last 5 or 6 years of doing conventions and working with other artists is guys who don't loop their needles. And I mean, you can work 6, 7, 8, 10 hours on something. If you're doing it with a damaged needle, it doesn't matter how good it looks. It's going to be a train wreck. It's going to heal poorly. Uh, one bad needle in a 15 needle group is doing more damage than the other 14 needles are doing good. So keep that in mind. You got to protect your needles too. So especially with something like a rotary or a pneuma where the needles, when the machine's at rest, the needles will actually be sticking out of the tube. So you got to be careful not to, well, A, not to jag yourself with the needle. You don't want to get pricked with a needle. Not to have the needle touch the surface of your table or tap into anything that might damage the tip of the needle. Um, you don't want to run your machine in your ink caps. That's another thing a lot of people do. And I'm not going to say I'm not guilty of doing it once in a while, but really, it's funny too because I know the way a lot of people are taught. They think that if you run the machine in the cap, it's like you're loading the machine with ink, and that's not true. If you just dunk your tip in the cap without running it, that's about as loaded as that thing's going to get. Um, and you're gonna when you're getting into color mixing and stuff, you're gonna be tapping around from cap to cap to cap, which is totally cool. That's what you want to do. And then when the machine is away from the caps, you run the machine to get the ink to mix up, and then you look at the tip of the machine, and now you see what that mixed color is. Another thing about running in the caps, other than damaging your needles, is you're cross contaminating all your colors. So you're going to find that you're going to dirty up your palette less too if you just dip from cap to cap without running the machine than if you run from cap to cap. You run from cap to cap, you stain all your colors way, way quicker. It makes a mess. But we're talking about protecting needles, so don't run in your caps. When you've tattooed, excuse me, and you've heard that noise, and you hit the and you hit the bottom of the cap, no good. Um, I would highly recommend if you heard that sound, you might want to bust out your loop and just double check to make sure you didn't damage your needles. The caps are pretty soft plastic, and they're, you sometimes you'll loop after that and nothing's happened, thank God, because it's kind of forgiving. But um, damaged needles, man, they're the culprit. Raised tattoos and some of the things that, oh man, I don't understand. Some of my tattoos come back raised and some of them don't. Well, are you checking your needles all the time, every tattoo? Um, Sometimes, a couple of bad needles, that's the culprit. Don't break the ink crust with your needles. Like if you get a crusty color like white or something that gets a shell, don't like take the tip of your machine and be like and crush the ink because that will ding up the needles and gum them up too. Just use your pinky or something, and if you push down with your finger or your pinky, put a drop of water on top of those colors at the beginning, and that'll help. And you don't have to put a drop of water on every color. You put a drop of water in the colors that tend to harden, like whites or oranges or whatever you find are the colors that crust up on you. One drop of water on the top is usually going to keep that from happening. So, and it's not going to dilute your color. If you use metal tubes and it feels like you touch the points um, of your needles while you were sliding the needle down into the tube, if you feel like dink, there's a good chance you may have damaged the needle. So when the machine is finally set up, you should really depress the armature bar and expose the needles and re-loop the needles, especially if you're a tattoo artist who doesn't have a lot of experience. this might be the most, crazy as it sounds, this might be the most important thing you learn from this entire DVD is you need pristine needles or you're going to be making a mess. You're going to be really damaging people and scarring people, and our goal as tattoo artists is not to scar people. So, yes, there are other ways of scarring people, but this is actually one of the ways you have some control over. So, please, please, please loop your needles. Very important.